in February this year, you made a comment about, well, you were talking about free trade agreements, and there had just been one signed with India. That was, I guess, in December, just before around Christmas time. And you said that immediately there'd been an enormous increase in requests from South Australian businesses to you for help in doing trade with India. How is that going?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we do document stamping for exports for businesses, and the demand for India has continued, and the government certainly at a federal level putting a lot of resources behind it because they still see there's a lot of work to be done still to get Australian businesses thinking about India, being comfortable with the Indian market. I had a meeting with the CEO of the Centre for Australia-India Trade that's just been literally developed, I think, in May this year by the government, and they're putting tens of $1 million behind this particular program to run for the next few years. So there's certainly money there, and in the South Australian businesses that we saw immediately respond were grains and almonds, tending to operate in that space more so than consumer products. But wine has been a product that the sector has been trying to get India engaged with for some time, but the tariffs on wine were just too high. They've come off a little bit, but whereas all these other products, the tariffs have come off effectively 100%, they're still sitting at around 50% for wine. So it still does make our wines, while not as expensive as they used to be, still quite expensive in the Indian market. And if I look from our members, the latest data from our own members, China is still the biggest market by a long way. And then it flattens out to Indonesia, now India, Vietnam. They're probably the next three.
Yes. Well, let's stick with free trade agreements. I understand the one with the European Union has stalled a bit, and we still have some issues around maybe things like Prosecco and Feta. Is that really what it's coming down to?
It is, from my understanding. We saw the UK agreement go through, and we really haven't seen much of a shift yet in response to that one, but I think we can expect to see that pick up. The EU free trade agreement is really stalling. Neither side prepared to give ground, and it is around the place names and the variety names like Prosecco when it comes to the sparkling, and the various cheeses causing problems as well.
Yes. And I know you have a solid background in the wine sector, and I want to make an unfair question about this, but I understand the industry here is saying, well, words like champagne are a region, but Prosecco is not a region. So it's hard to justify. At a negotiating level, though, I don't know how much that's worth if there's a strong counterbalance at the other end.
Look, I think it's a difficult one to argue against because it's not a place, it's a grape.
Yeah.
And you can't see any real rationale why a particular region can own a grape that can be grown anywhere in the world. Yes, you can see an argument if Prosecco was grown in the town of Prosecco, in the province of Prosecco, but it's not how it is.
And we have quite a few, let's say, Italian grape varieties growing even here in South Australia and growing nicely.
Absolutely. We do.
Fiano, I was going to say Zinfandel, but it's Primitivo. And several others. So,
Sangiovese,
Sangiovese, yeah. Cool. So why do we like, in principle, free trade agreements?
Well, they create a equal playing field, if you like. If you're going into a market whereby the Australian product, for example, faces, let's say, a tax of 30%, and in the same market, the Chilean product's going in there without any tax on it, it immediately makes our product 20% more expensive and puts us in a worse position in terms of how we can price our product. So immediately you're at a competitive disadvantage. So it just creates this level playing field for everyone where you can compete on your merits, not based on where you've come from.
Yeah, and then there's a difference between being, as you say, an insider and an outsider, and all of a sudden, so the trade gets diverted to people who are inside the club versus those that are outside the club. Well, let's hope that. Yeah.
Sorry, and often, with a lot of these international markets, Australia is already at a disadvantage because of our high wages in this country. So we could be competing. Wine we just spoke about. If you're competing against a market like Chile to operate anywhere around the world, you know that their labour costs are significantly lower than Australia. So they're already at an advantage. If you then find yourself being subject to protection like a tariff, because you have those in place against you, but they don't have them, it just makes that distance between the competition harder to bridge.